Good afternoon and welcome back to our webinar series that we are doing in conjunction with the Victorian Department of Education. We are really excited to have everybody joining us this afternoon or this evening or this morning or whenever it is that you actually watch this if you are not joining us live. Great to see people are joining us in the chat. Please use this chat that you can see throughout the webinar to ask questions, comments, also share your ideas. We talked about a couple of webinars ago that we've been in this strange place where none of us are experts, and my 3-year-old is about to start screaming. So I'm going to just pause myself and let Jim and Chris talk. Sorry.
Thanks, Kimberly. The realities of working from home, right? So Jim, one of the things I know that Kimberly did want to flag up with us before we get into like the bulk of the rest of the webinar was the Teach From Home website, which we've mentioned every webinar, and it's a great resource there. But actually, one of the things that has happened on the Teach From Home website, which is really useful and just came out, is this update for families. So there's actually now a whole section on that website looking at how parents and guardians can support their children from home. And if I can just show you really quickly here, the Teach From Home website. You just go to teachfromhome.google, and when you scroll down, there is now a For Families tab, and that will then help you to find lots of resources and ideas around using technology at home to support your children, even when they are screaming 3-year-olds.
Yeah, apologies. There's many people who probably got a nice little laugh out of that, which is great because I'm sure many people have experienced exactly that in the last few weeks. And thank you, Chris, for stepping in and talking about that. And I do want to reinforce that even though the Teach From Home website is called Teach From Home, we really like to think of it as about how you're learning from anywhere. And we are obviously starting the transition back into school in Victoria. I can see lots of people are joining us from places not just in Victoria who are moving back to school. New Zealand, Lisa is joining. You guys are going back next week to school. And I really think that those resources that Chris just talked about are about that continuity of learning, because we know the most impactful learning happens when we are able to engage our families in the learning that's happening, whatever physical environment that learning happens in. So please tap into those resources and share them with your community for moving forward. There's also some great accessibility stuff on there, but we're going to talk about that in a couple of other webinars. So I am going to go, before I have a 3-year-old come out the door again any moment, I am going to hand over to Jim Sill from Deploy Learning and Chris Hart from Unstuck Learning Design, who will be hosting this afternoon's webinar again, where we're going to be talking about all things assessment online, not necessarily from home, but wherever it is, and ways that you can utilize the full suite of Google's tools and our amazing tech partners that enhance our tools even further to do all kinds of really cool assessments. So enough from me, Chris and Jim.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. It's always good to hear screaming children in the background. It just makes everything else seem so normal.
So before we actually get going with the body of the webinar and this kind of sharing that we're doing around assessment today, we do just want to take a moment to think about and to really connect with the land, or the different lands, in fact, that we're on today, and to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of those lands, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And also, just because we are actually, I'm just looking in the chat, we do have people from all over. We've got Victoria, but we've also got all over the place, including New Zealand, to think about our First Peoples and to think about their connection to land and their connection to being human and coming together and sharing knowledge. And that's what we're about today. So Jim and I, we're definitely experts at a lot of things, but as Kimberly mentioned, a lot of the expertise has been thrown out of the window in the current situation. So we would love to hear from you as well in that chat, and we'll keep an eye on that as we go along. If you do want some additional support from, this is not, I should say this up front, this is not a direct Google for Education kind of resource. It's actually a community resource made up of people like Jim and I, who are Google certified innovators and Google certified trainers and Google educator groups who've come together to create this website. If you want specific help, you've got some specific questions you want to share with people, then this is an opportunity for you to jump on that website there, nzgfecommunity.com, and to register your questions and to have those questions answered. And also we have another service which we'll just flag up again at the end, which is office hours, where Jim and I hang around and sit in our offices, and we talk to wonderful people who want to book in and have a little bit of time for some one-to-one. So we'll flag that up at the end of the webinar with a link to that as well. But what are we doing today, Jim? What's happening?
Can I just add that that community of trainers and innovators, a lot of the trainers and innovators across ANZ are in the classroom practicing teachers. And so when you get in there and you request some help, be specific. I'm looking for like a secondary teacher in science or something like that. And you'll be surprised at how many people are just waiting. I actually have that thing set up, Chris, to where it notifies me as soon as somebody fills out that form. And I know I'm not alone because I usually get in there too late and it's somebody's already grabbed the help. So it's really, if you're a classroom teacher and you just want some one-to-one help with somebody who knows maybe what you're going through and also about the particular applications that you're seeking help with. It's anyways, I just wanted to spruik that a little bit.
Thanks, Jim. So tell me what we're doing today.
We have so many things to do today. I can't read that, so I need to go find a slide that looks like that. Where are my glasses? Somebody's got to have my glasses around here somewhere. I'll help. There we go. Chris, we're gonna talk a little bit about. I think you're going to remind us about some of the design principles, right?
Yes.
And then we'll talk about some more good stuff. I think you're going to share, and then I'm going to talk about Google Forms because that's the obvious connection here, right? We'll get into some rubrics down the road, and then we'll talk about Google Sites. I think we mentioned Google Sites maybe the first episode.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more specifically about it being a learning portfolio. And then I'll share some stuff about Google Slides just to sort of connect some partners in there. And then very briefly, we'll talk about Read and Write again. I think we mentioned that a while back as well. But we've got some cool features to share today, and hopefully it'll be a valuable use of your time.
So just coming back to what we always like to start with are these design principles that whatever we do in distance learning, and as we gradually move back into some more face-to-face and very probably a real hybrid model of learning, then we just want to ensure that when we're using technology, we're aiming for a really strong connection, that we're looking to get kids to engage in collaboration with rich learning experiences. And we're really trying to look at learning growth and thinking. And that last principle is the one we're probably focusing on most today is really trying to see what learning growth looks like. We will just reference, but I know this isn't applicable to everyone in the webinar, but in Victoria, we do have those high impact teaching strategies. And again, everything we do, you can almost always link it back to these strategies right here. So what I do want to do is before we just go on and look at things like Google Forms, which I know Jim's going to take us through and show us some amazing pieces in there around assessment, I do just want to kind of put some challenging questions and thoughts out there around assessment, and indeed the word assessment. And when we're in a distance learning, what's the word I'm looking for? When we're in a distance learning situation, that's not the word I wanted, but anyway, when we're in a distance learning situation and when we're forced to be using technology much more, maybe that's a great time for us to just ask, when we are assessing students, what are we measuring and why are we measuring it? Because there is, we absolutely value what we measure. We love to see, data. We love to see some nice graphs about student learning, and we, like what they call box and whisker plots, which I hate, by the way. But you've got all of these different things that we do love to generate data around kids learning, and we really value what we measure. But I think sometimes we don't always measure what we value, and that's a real opportunity for us now when we're thinking about assessment to think about what kind of things we want to measure. And what are the really valuable things that we can measure? And so we're going to explore that a little bit. I think the next thing that we're going to think about in terms of assessment is choose your learning proxies carefully. So we know that obviously learning happens inside children's heads, so we can't see it. So when we want to assess it, we need to create some kind of proxy, so something that represents the learning that's happening in the students' heads. Often that will be a test, which is fine, or we'll do an essay, and we have some traditional learning proxies which we tend to lean on an awful lot. And I think what we'd love to suggest to you is to say, well, in this this area where we're using so much more technology, are there other learning proxies that we can use? So how can we use videos? And Jim, I must say, has got some. I'm just going to give you a compliment, mate. It's so good around this area. What are the different ways of students showing their understanding, and a particular expert around video? And that's such a great and powerful way to create a learning proxy. And the last bit is really to focus on growth, feedback, and feed forward. So that formative cycle in terms of assessment, especially at the moment, because one of the things which we know is that equity is a real issue, and equity in the distance learning or in the continuous learning situation that we're built. So if you're giving kids standardized assessments right now, the main thing you're measuring is, do they have access to a computer? Do they have access to a quiet place where they haven't got 5 other people who want to use the computer or use the bandwidth? And do they have a place where they can actually sit and work? So there's something really important, I think, that when we're focusing on learning and assessment at this moment in time, that formative assessment is much more powerful, but also it allows you to level the playing field. And let's have a little think about something that Dylan Williams, so the guru of formative assessment, talks about when he says zero stakes assessment. So literally where you give kids an assessment, you do it open book, you make sure that they all have access to open book. The kids actually get the mark scheme, they mark it themselves, they do some reflection on it, and they only share it back to the teacher if you really want them to. So there's, I think at the moment, thinking about what we're measuring and why we're measuring it through assessment is a really key and important piece of what we are going to be looking at today. But having said that, or having said all of that, is that we are actually going to start looking at some really kind of powerful tools that allow you to do both summative and formative assessment. So we're going to be looking at Google Forms. Hopefully some of you got some experience in that. But my friend Jim is going to demo some of these amazing uses of Google Forms to you.
Well, thank you, Chris. I feel like we should have talked about Google Forms before your little presentation there.
Probably. Sorry.
A little bit of pressure now. So if you wouldn't mind, Miss Georgia, to be able to refresh or show my screen. Chris, often, you'll recall this last week, we're like, we should build this form, and it's amazing. It'll be this amazing thing. And then we were like, but hasn't somebody else done that? Well, and it turns out somebody else has made a really great form. And we have stolen it from him. We asked permission this morning. Many of you know Chris Betcher. He's a friend of ours, but he's also at Google. And he had the time to create a form that has all of the form questions. So I thought I'd just run it through it, a few of these things, because I think it can be a powerful example of the 11 different types of questions you can ask on a form. And so this is maybe, I know he tweeted about it. That's where we first stole it from him. And it is, you can find him at Chris Betcher on Twitter. And recently, maybe last week, Chris, is when he put this together, as if he was listening, I think.
And we're going to drop a link to that also into the chat right now.
Yeah, that would be great. So you can kind of see if your screen's big enough that there's different types of questions, but there's also a space where you can actually add blocks of text, or a description box, as Chris calls it. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill it out while we're going. And it's you can short answer questions, and then there's also short answer questions that require you to enter in certain information. So, for example, like, what's your favorite travel website? In this case, he set up this Google form to where you have to type HTTP:// like, who types that? Hypertext Transfer Protocol anymore? But that's part of the deal, right? Some just make up a website, and it's and then so down here, here's another question that essentially requires you to accept a number. It has to have a number higher than 0. So I love these data validation pieces that go in there. Chris, I'm going to put 2. How many countries have you visited?
More than 2.
More than 2. And then here, describe a certain holiday experience. And this requires a lot more than just a short answer. And he's created this, so it has to take 50 characters, right? So I'm assuming is that 50? Do you think? Not just a short one, right? And so we'll see how that goes. And then down here, we all know this multiple choice. I'll just make something up here. And then this says you have to select 2. So this is great when it's a quiz, right? And then down here, this is a drop-down menu. So text boxes allow anybody to select more than one answer, whereas multiple choice, is just one. And then down here is a Dropbox. I love the Dropbox. I think it's one of my faves. And then you can upload a file, but Chris has said here in this form that you can't upload to a shared drive. So this form has to live outside of a shared drive. That makes me feel like we need to talk about shared drives, but we're not. And then here's a ranking. I love the rankings out of 10. And then down here, this is one where you just have to sort of select different columns, right? And then, so what do we call this one? Do you remember, Chris? It's a grid question.
It's a grid question, yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people really struggle with how to develop a grid question, but it's great because there's so many great information. There's so much great information here. So I'm just going to kind of go down across, because these, you can only choose one per column. If his answers are wrong, don't judge me. I'm just moving quickly through it, okay? It's not as if I don't know. I'm just not reading it, okay? So I'll just go through here. I don't know what this means, but I'm just going to keep going. And this is the one that catches everybody. This is about dates, right? So you actually have to put in a date. Did you notice how it was month, day, year?
Oh, is that the American way of doing things, Jim?
Yeah, that's an American way, and that can be really it can throw a lot of people off. But the text is there for you to know what to write, right? And then I love this. This is time. So these are all data validation pieces that I think a lot of us overlook. And then here, would you like to see more? And then you can go into a new page. So I think there's some really great types of questions. I want to jump to another one that I think can be really helpful. Is Chris uses this other one, and we can put this link into the chat as well. He created another one really about just images. So you can have a question that's text and then the answer is text, but you can also have a question where the answer is an image. So I think this is a really great example of the kind of questions that we might want to be asking about. Maybe software, or or maybe images from a cell or something like that, right? So really, and you'll notice in this that this is a quiz that actually assigns points. So this is a self-grading quiz. So in this particular example, Chris Betcher has set up that each question is worth points, and then as soon as it's done, it will give me a grade. So I think that's a really cool feature. I like that this question here is like, hey, take a look at this image and then respond with a multiple choice answer. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that using Google Forms, you can just go beyond your simple text and your simple multiple choice answer, and you can really get into some more higher level thinking, I suppose. But I do love this one. This just has so this is just an image with more images, right? So really, really great work in here. So this one here, Chris, did you see this talk and comment?
Yeah.
If you had the talk and comment, Chrome extension, I think we talked about that last time, didn't we?
We did mention it, yeah. And Heather, our friend from Casey Fields, Heather, she likes it better than the other one.
I forgot. I couldn't remember if there was some negativity associated with it.
That's no negativity. So we love it.
And I think Heather came in and was like, "You guys are wrong again," and it was awkward.
She really likes it. She loves it.
Yeah. So now that I've installed Talk and Comment, the Chrome extension, and you may have noticed I read all of the terms and conditions in order to make that work. What I love about this is that as soon as I install the Talk and Comment piece, that this now becomes an audio file, which is really, really cool. And being from America, all my friends that come over, they're like, I love going to Canberra. And I don't even know what that means. I don't know how they, I've never made that mistake. But anyways, you can see.
Canberra.
Oh, yeah, perfect. And I love this. This is a really great feature, right? So this is really great for getting kids to help understand language, and also for, especially if you're teaching a second language to your students or a first language. It's really good. And then we can go on. There's a bunch of great features in here, and hopefully we've shared this into the chat for you to be able to take a look at. Chris will probably get you don't have to take the quiz, right? You don't have to take it, but I guess you could. He'll probably get 1 million responses based on it. But I do love that you can add a number of things in here. Let me quickly just share with you where you can turn on the quiz feature in here if you haven't seen it already. So I'm just going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to call this, I'm just going to go to forms.new. Do you remember that we did this a while back? Forms.new is the shortcut for creating a form. You don't have to go to Drive and then go to drop down menu and go in there. So I'm just going to call this a sandbox quiz, and just go from there, right? I can't spell quiz. And then, so our first question here is just simply, what is, well, here we go. What is the name of the river running through, I'm going to spell it correctly, Melbourne. And since I live here, I can say that. Can I? All right. And so let's just say it's, it's the Yarra. Let's say it's the Hudson. And let's say it is the Yellow River, okay? And then here, if I go into multiple choice, that's great. But the way I want to make this into a quiz is I have to go up here to this gear shift, right? So I go into that gear shift, and then far right, quizzes. And then you can just say, make this a quiz, okay? And this is really a cool feature. If you have Chromebooks, if you're using Chromebooks in your classroom and you're running a quiz, you can turn on locked mode. And if you turn on lock mode, this is it actually pops the quiz into a full screen, and the kids can't go to other screens. It's pretty cool, in my opinion, if you're doing that sort of thing and you're into that sort of control around quizzes. And then that's it, right? You can just save that, and then now, because it's a quiz, it comes down here and it says, hey, what's the answer, Jim? And I just have to go in and select the answer. And then I just have to assign it some points. I'm going to say 1,500 points. It's high dollar item, the high dollar item. And then I make that required, okay? And then that's where it is. If you were sort of curious before how Chris made these asked for that data validation, that would be under these 3 dots. Let's go in here and just look for, I think it's under there, isn't it? Maybe not for this question, but it's under there. It says data validation.
So there, for anyone that you're going to enter data into?
Yeah, like so if I were like, what does life mean? Something like that. And then I could come down here and change this to a paragraph. Then when I go into here, there's response validation. That's what it's called. I said data validation. But it says here length, I'm going to say it maybe needs to be 1,000 characters. Okay, maybe 2,000 characters. I'm really looking for a long description of what life means. Can you drop down the minimum character count arrow there, Jim? Yeah, maximum. So you got to do maximum as well. Yeah, so you can stop people from going on, right? Which is great. Have you ever done that? You have to fill out a form that says you have to limit your language. Yeah, all of the competitions I enter, it's like in 20 words or less. Tell me why you want to win this Breville slow cooker. I'm like, okay. Because I really need a slow cooker. You're like 20 words. How do I do that? How do I fit it? So I think this is really it can be a cool feature, right? So if you're in there, you can certainly do that. But remember, look in here under that response validation. Did I turn it off? I meant to open up. See where it says length. I can this is a regular expression. So all of this is contextual. So because I've chosen paragraph, these things change, right? So if I were to go in here and then say, let's just say a short answer in that, and then what is your email? And then I go into here and it's response validation, and it's like, I could have not done that. And it says here, do you see this suggestion, enable email collecting setting? So I could easily go in there and do that. So I'm going to click on that because it'll probably make it easier for me. No, do you see what that did? I messed that up. So that actually made it, you had to have your emails. You have to be signed in for it to collect that, which I didn't want. But you get the idea, right, Chris? Yeah. Okay, good. And it's there's a lot of cool features in there. So remember that little 3 dots, that means something in there, and you should click on it when you're ever doing this sort of thing, and then and click on what the options are. Most of that data validation comes from short answer, long answer, and then so if I go into there, I can go in here and just change a number of these things, right? So I can say text contains an email address, and that any guesses what that would require? Chris?
Me, sorry, I thought you were waiting for the chat. Is it going to need an at, what do you call them? An at symbol? Yeah. An ampersand? No, that's not an ampersand.
No,
Ampersand's the and, isn't it?
If you're in the chat and you know what that symbol with the A and the circle around it's called, that'll help us for the next time we do this, and we can act like we know what we're talking about.
I know in French it's called arrobase, which is one of my favorite words. Arrobase. So anyway, yeah, an at symbol.
It's good. It's good just in case you find yourself in France and you're saying you want to get an email address and they just give you the front part of it. You can
Jim arrobase. deploylearning.com. Yeah.
Sorry. What's after the arrobase?
Deploylearning.com. That's it.
Okay, good. So there's that, right? If I feel like we don't need to go into this too much, but maybe we do. You know, there's a lot of people who are just getting new to forms, or you maybe don't really dig into forms as much. But I really do think that some of those little buttons in there are really good to be clicking on, right? There's little tiny buttons.
So Jim, if I'm so you've shown us, which is brilliant, you've shown us a bunch of different question types. So and thank you to Chris for his examples of all those different question types. So the challenge, I guess, is intellectually thinking through, again, going back to that question that we asked, what are you measuring? Like, what do you want to find out, right? And knowing that there are lots of different question types that you can use, but really planning your form carefully. Because I sometimes think you can go crazy with forms. Like you can have 75 pages worth of questions, and it's a bit too much. But what I am interested in is, okay, so we've seen lots of examples of questions. You've shown us how to set up using forms.new. But is there another way that I can create a quiz and get that quiz out to my students in a very timely and smart manner? I'm just wondering if that exists.
That's great, Chris, and what an interesting segue your question has led us to. But I think we maybe jumped the gun just a little bit, because I want to share one little thing really quickly, and it pertains to what you just said. When you're creating a form, we need to remember that it's the responses that make a difference to us, right? So when I click on responses here, it usually it'll graph your answers depending on the question. So what you're saying, Chris, is like, be sure you're asking the question in order to get the answers because you have to know what you're going to do with the answers. So if you're going to graph those, if you really want to graph those, you may have to consider the type of question you're asking. Like, you can't ask an open-ended question with like 50 characters, in a paragraph setting if you want to graph that. So you have to sort of say, okay, I need to have multiple selections with the check boxes, or I'm just really looking at, in general, how are my kids doing? How are they feeling in this? And so getting a pie graph of those responses. But more importantly is that when you have a form, the answers to the form can be pushed out to a spreadsheet. And so you can create a new spreadsheet. Forgive my untitled form. Many of you are watching that going, oh, bleh, an untitled form is going to create an untitled spreadsheet. Bleh. But the idea here is that all that data goes into a spreadsheet, and then I can do lots of things. And I think we spoke about that in our one of our webinars about Drive, where we can use data is it data validation? What am I thinking?
Conditional formatting.
Conditional formatting in there to sort of highlight answers, and then of course using the sort tool, and then up here under data, creating filters based on that answer. So that can be a little bit overwhelming and potentially a little bit stressful. But what you were saying at the start of this, Chris, that we're kind of data-holics a lot in education, aren't we? And it's about, what do we do with that data once we've collected it? How can we organize that data in a way that makes it useful? So I just want to say that. And then, but Chris, you were asking like, hey, I want to make a quiz, but I don't want to go through all that drama. I can go into here in Google Classroom, and then I can come up here to create. And then the second one from the top is create a quiz assignment. So watch when I click this, I get this title, and then what's it? It's automatically just going and grabbing creating a Google form. Now it says blank quiz. When I click that, it opens up a quiz that's already set up for marking. Okay. And send here, if you said, oh, I didn't listen to what Jim and Chris were saying on that webinar, here's the whole thing on how to take a tour. And then you can go and do that yourself. I would also search Google YouTube. YouTube's got 1 million teachers talking about Google Forms. Anyways, there it is. It's as simple as that. I don't have to click any cogwheels or anything. I just have to ask my questions. Okay. And maybe you're one of those teachers who's like, I keep making the same form over and over again. This is a new feature, that little arrowy paper thing over on the side. Import questions. Just import questions from previous quizzes and reuse those quizzes, because we all know that quizzes are useful 10 years after you've written them. And you can just keep reusing the same ones. That may have been sarcasm, Chris. Maybe, just slightly. Yeah. With the American accent, I think it's hard to hide. Yeah. But anyways, I think that's cool. Being able to go into Google Classroom and then finding that, and then and just adding a quiz from there. Notice that little button that says grade importing. So that's even cooler. It just goes right in, and everything is done for you. And speaking of Google Classroom, Chris.
Yes.
There's other things inside of here that I think are useful.
So Jim, we're just going to grab a question from Lisa. So Lisa, thank you. So Lisa has also confirmed my understanding of the @ symbol being called arrowbars. So that's excellent. Thank you very much, Lisa. But she does also have a statement, which I think, I'm not sure, it might have even been Lisa that mentioned this, and maybe she's been on one of the webinars before, about conditional formatting disappearing in single cells when the responses come in. So I think what the issue with that is, Lisa, is do you just want to jump onto that spreadsheet, Jim, and we can...
So that spreadsheet has no answers in it.
That's fine. It's fine. Okay. We'll go...
Was it here?
It's on the far right, yeah. Oh, hello, Lisa. I thought it was. Do you want to put like some 3s and 5s or something in one of those columns? Just
yeah, let's just put in maybe a score, maybe 3, 4, 5, 8, that kind of thing. Okay.
So if you then, so in terms of applying the conditional formatting, so that it doesn't get overwritten, so the conditional formatting just applies to the whole column, it's really important that when you apply that, and I don't know if you've tried this, Lisa, since then, but if you click on the top of that column and then apply format conditional formatting, any new data that's imported into the sheet will apply that conditional formatting.
At least down to cell 101, at least. At
least down to cell 101, which is probably the last row on that. Oh, great. Awesome. So using that will not overwrite the conditional formatting, which is good. And we've got another question. If you create a quiz later and then attach it, it doesn't seem to import the grades properly from S. Persephone. That's a question I do not know the answer to, because I think I'm not sure what's happening when you're trying to. If you create a quiz later and then attach it, it doesn't seem to import the grades properly. So I think the issue is in order to get the grade import is you have to create that as a quiz assignment. So you actually have to. So the quiz assignment needs to be created in Classroom to have that grade import thing. So if you create a form outside and then attach it, I'm not sure it gives you the same grade importing options there at all. And Lisa has a form set up to make a gold, silver, and bronze for the first, second, and third place winners that came in, but it didn't work. Okay, well maybe at some point you can drop into office hours, Lisa, and we'll work through that, and we can share screens and try to see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And we could, and we just, troubleshoot it and work through it. Because I think sometimes the more specific we get, the harder it is to sort of pinpoint the issue. It is really about almost like coding, right? Yeah. It's about finding that one step. But yeah, we're always available for that.
All right, so I'm just looking at time, Jim. So maybe if we're going to jump across onto our next bit, and yes, if you want to import grades into Google Classroom, I would always create the quiz in Google Classroom using the quiz assignment.
True.
That would be my answer to that one. All right, so if I can have the demo screen back, please. Georgia, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. One of the things we're going to have a quick look at is actually, so we've looked at Google Forms, but we're going to revisit Classroom, and we're going to have a little look at some of the rubrics in Classroom. And what we want to do is to really try and look at rubrics that help us to capture learning growth. And then we're going to look at portfolios and badges. So different ways of assessing. Still assessment, it's still about giving feedback and capturing learning growth, but maybe slightly less traditional to something like a quiz or a test. And what we've got is in our classwork, on our Google Classroom, what we've added is we're really interested in kids, and in Victoria, we have the Victorian General Capabilities. We're really interested in kids getting better at things like their capability growth. Now, you might want to give students some kind of learning activity which is specifically focused on them developing their critical and creative thinking skills, for example. Or you might do what we've done here. And what we've done is we've created an assignment which I've realized I've got a due for tomorrow, but I should actually have a due for the end of the term or even the end of the year. And what we're going to do is just use Google Classroom in a kind of way to have a look at capturing evidence of learning around critical and creative thinking. So this assignment space, so there's nothing actually attached to this. So we're not assigning a template or anything, because this is just a space for students to capture lots of different points of evidence around their growth in critical and creative thinking. What we've got is some instructions here that this assignment is a space for you to add examples, reflections, videos, and even testimonials. I might say to Jim, can you give me an example where I've been a really good critical thinker around, for example, asking really good questions? And Jim could give me a little testimonial or record something for me. And what we're doing is capturing all of that here. So from a student's perspective, they've got that option to add lots of evidence and continually add evidence. What I'm going to do is just change my due date, and we're going to change that to, let's do it until like November, right? The end of November. That'll do. And what we've done is we've just built in a rubric here, and we've taken 4 of the criteria from the critical and creative. Oh, sorry, we've taken. We've got 4 of the criteria from the critical and creative thinking general capability, that strand. And what we've got here is we've just got these rubrics, which you will notice that there has been an update in Google Classroom, I think like maybe last week, where you no longer have to add point values. So you don't have to have numbers attached to this. Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the questions as well. Yeah, so the idea of this exactly, Persephone, who has just said, do you keep adding to it and never submit it? Yeah, so it really is. Obviously, as a teacher, I can keep looking in there, but it really is a place to capture examples. But what we've got are some rubrics to help the students. What I just want to do is jump into editing these rubrics. And you'll see that there's this button here now called Use Scoring. And so I actually turned that off, because what they've got here is they'll automatically add points. And I don't want that, because I actually don't want to use the kids to think that I am a 4 in metacognition. What I want them to really think about is to focus on the description. So I'm going to turn off scoring. So that makes me happy, by the way, Jim. I don't have to have numbers attached to it, because assessment isn't all about numbers. What does what I have done in here, let me just save that because you get a slightly better view of it, is we've used a descriptor to describe the quality. And I mean, we're not going into this in great depth at all, but if you want to have a look at Solo taxonomy, which is a taxonomy that looks at the structure of observed learning outcomes, this is what we've used to create this rubric. And here it says that the learning outcome is I can reflect on my own learning strategies so that I can better understand what helps me to learn. And what we've got along the bottom are some descriptors. So if I'm ready, it means I don't yet think about my own learning. If I'm at level 1, it's I understand that this is important to think about my own learning. If I'm at a multi-level, I can list different learning strategies and identify when I'm using them. If I'm at the connect level, I can consider how well different learning strategies support my learning and select the most effective strategy. And then if I'm at this top level, which we call extend and transform, I'm able to identify effective learning strategies from one context and transfer it to another. And the reason that this isn't time-based, I'm not expecting you to demonstrate this to me next week, is that what I want to do is to give just students a language, like a growth ladder, that they can look at this and think, okay, how am I going to move on? And I'm going to show you a slightly adapted version of this as well. But basically what we're doing is giving the students this capacity to understand what we mean by developing really good questions under critical and creative thinking, or developing our reasoning skills under critical and creative thinking, or generating possibilities under critical and creative thinking. And that, remember, should be applied in every subject across the curriculum. These are the general capabilities, and they apply to all of the subjects. So thinking about what we're assessing, maybe we can be assessing other things, like, for example, these general capabilities. And I hate using the term assess, because it's not really assessing in the sense that I'm going to say you are a 47% at metacognition and an 82% at questions. It's much more about giving kids a language that they can use. You'll notice that they're all written in the first person. It doesn't say the student, it says I. So this is, we're using rubrics in a slightly different way. We're using this rubric in a slightly different way in order to get kids to talk about their learning and to capture evidence of their learning. So for example, if I've got things like, I might be looking at possibilities, so I can generate a number of different ideas, possibilities of and actions. If I've been doing something, then absolutely around ideas, then absolutely I can then share those things and actually even attach it into my assignment alongside these rubrics. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep an eye on the chat and this at the same time, because there are a few questions are coming in.
Focus. Yes. Try to just
focusing. So we've built this into the rubric, and what we'll do is absolutely I'm going to share something which has these rubrics in them. So you're absolutely welcome to see that. But what we wanted to do within Classroom was just show you that the assignment tool doesn't have to be you've got a week to do this. It can actually be something that we use to collect over time. And the way that we kind of organized that was we put in a topic header, which is my capability growth. And so it's just there, and it just can be continually added to. Now, I doubt students are self-regulating enough at the moment to do that on their own. So you might need to say, okay, this week we're really going to focus on one of these capabilities. So there's that option there of really supporting kids to use them. Right. We might just deal with a couple of questions, Jim.
Phil is asking about, I think Phil might be admiring your rubric and saying, oh, can I click a button and get that? Maybe I'm paraphrasing Phil, but but you want to talk about how you created that?
Yeah. So what we're going to, in terms of the actual creation of the rubric, it's really easy. The content, Phil, we're going to give you in a minute. So we'll give you just these descriptors in a slightly different version. One of the issues I think with which I'd love to actually explore a little bit more is how can you share, which I don't think you can yet, but can you share rubrics in Classroom to someone totally different who isn't in your classroom, right?
That would be great. Have it be stored in Drive or something like that, and then I can grab it and put it into Google Classroom.
Yeah. And one of the ways you could do that internally is you could create a classroom which is just for teachers. And what you might do is to create an assignment in there with a rubric. So everyone who's within that classroom, so then you add all of your teachers into that classroom. They can then reuse the rubric from that classroom in their own classrooms. But even then, it's still going to be within your domain, within the classroom you've created. It'd be lovely to be able to share them beyond that and export it out. I guess, I'm not sure, is there we can import, here we go, brilliant. So S. Persephone, I'd love to know what your first name is so I don't have to keep calling you S. Persephone. It just made me think of that, which is a great idea, is we can actually export this to Google Sheets, because when we're creating rubrics, we can import from Google Sheets as well. So that's one way to share it. So we can do that. So export to Google Sheets.
I bet you all the Googlers were saying that in the background, going, yeah, that's totally what you can do.
Just export to Google Sheets. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. Don't get me wrong, but I'd love just a direct share from Classroom. Thank you, Sarah. I now know it's Sarah. Oh, see, it looks a bit ugly, doesn't it?
I bet you'd have imported. I mean, it'd be cool to
import it. Yeah. All right. So yes, we can export into Sheets and then import that way. But if we look at this in edit mode for a second, it is as simple as adding criterion. You give a criterion title. So this one might be, let's say, collaboration. Collaboration. Give it a description, which I want to here, and then use whatever level you want to. Like obviously we often do novice, advanced, mastery. There are lots of different ways to do this. I just particularly like the solar taxonomy as a useful way to do that. And your criterion is then there and available. And in this context, it's much more about the students using it themselves rather than using it for real assessment. It's much more about self-reflection. All right, so I'll just discard that. What we are going to share with you is just another idea, which was this thinking about, well, how else can we capture students' learning, which is different proxies beyond just having tests and essays. And one of the ways is to create some of these project canvases. So this is and we've shared this a few times now in terms of thinking canvases. This is a new thinking canvas. And this one is, if you were doing, this is an example of a design thinking project. But if you were doing any kind of project, building a space in Google Slides, a canvas in Google Slides, where you are going to capture all of the kids' learning is a wonderful way for us to actually develop that assessment piece. And so this one, which we're going to share out shortly, is, it's a design thinking one. There's a bit about the design thinking process. Then Kanban boards, which I feel we've talked about a million times now, but I do love a Kanban board.
That's probably why we keep talking about it.
Which is all of the tasks are chunked down for the students, so they can move their tasks along as they're working on them. So this is just guiding them through what they need to do, and then a space for them to do like challenge statements, a space for them to do actors mapping. And don't worry if you don't understand what this content stuff is. It's just design thinking. Give Jim and I a shout, and we will help you out on design thinking because we love it. But this could be anything, right? This could be whatever you want kids to do. It might be getting them to write paragraphs, redrafting. But what I've also included in this, or what we've popped into this, are things like reflections. So getting students to do reflections. And we're not going to go into this a lot, but we could do screencasting. And actually, we're doing a full webinar on screencasting next week, I think. So you could get the kids to record videos and drop them in as reflections. But all of the tasks, persona cards, everything you want the kids to do in a project are actually sitting in this sitting within this deck. So then when you push that out to the students, they all get their own copy, and you are able, as we've shown you in the classroom webinars, to scroll through and see everyone's versions of their kind of their student workbook. And what I've got at the bottom of this for you, and this is where you can get this, you can use this information, is those rubrics. So the rubrics came, the text comes from these blocks here. So we're getting better and better at questioning. These gray bricks here are called Move Me On sections, and they're just one piece of advice that you could give if the student or you self-assesses or assesses at being at this level. If you do this one thing here, it's going to help you to move up to the next level. So when we're talking about the power of self-assessment, this is the ability to give students some moving on advice without you having to actually be there with them. So we've got a bunch of those there. And the other thing, because Jim and I love stickers, if you ever need some amazing stickers, Jim is like a dealer of stickers. He has them from all over the world. And what we've done, it's true story, right? You've got so many stickers. And what we've got is a digital space to collect badges or stickers. And so we've got some example badges for you here, like questions and reasoning and metacognition, possibilities, empathy, contribution. So they're all there, and you can actually award those to kids. And we showed this really quickly the other day. One of the quick ways to award them is if you keep them in Google Keep. When you're in Slides, you can actually click on Google Keep, and you can open up your badges. This has probably got my it's actually got my shopping list in there as well. But I found my badges, and I've got my empathy badge, and I want to drop that into there. Oh, is that going to go in the circle? No, it's not. And I can actually add badges that way as well, and keep them in my Google Keep, so I can add them as a teacher.
Christy, can I just say that you sharing that is probably the first time I've really made use of any of those three things that just sort of sit off to the side on any Google Doc, right? So any Google Drive document. At least I should say docs and slides. And so, Sarah, that sort of answers your question, that when you're using Google, when you're assessing, or you're just sort of adding comments to a Google Doc with your students, you can open up in Google Classroom, you can open that up full screen, and then be able. No, you know what? Now I say that you probably can't. You can't actually access those three things from the side in a Google Classroom, can you, Chris?
But you can copy it out of your Keep, or you can insert it as an image. Like you might want to keep a folder of these badges. What I would love to see, Sarah, is I think what you're maybe getting at there is the integration of badges into Google Classroom directly. I think that's a really exciting piece of development. And again, what we always say to everyone, and it genuinely does work, is if you click on the question mark in the bottom of Google Classroom or any of the G Suite products, is you can report an issue. We're not reporting an issue, but we are requesting a feature. All of the stuff that has been changed in Google Classroom has come from feature requests. So they really do listen to it, and the more people ask for it, then the kind of higher up the list that goes. So I would love to see the ability to add badges in there, but bearing in mind that you know, the whole rubrics and markbook didn't exist like a year ago. So Classroom's been around 5 years or something, and they're constantly updating it. So please do give that feedback in there.
Yes. It is so good, and I think the idea of badging is also a good one. I was just recently sharing something from a guy in the UK who, no, it was in Spain. I think he's an international school teacher in Spain, where he created all of these badges, and it basically put them out there for anybody to use. And Chris, you made those badges just from some graphics that you had created for other reasons, right?
Yeah.
So.
But you can make them out of anything you want, right?
Yeah, and like this, search Google Drive, right? Like, I mean, search Google, like, and there's tons of people posting just generic badges, like, good work. But there's just, there's so many great reasons to, like, you're a sharer or something, or you're a communicator this week or something like that.
And all that stuff in the capabilities, right, Jim? It's all there. Like, we're supposed to be doing that, and how we do it is an interesting challenge.
It's so true. Hey, Chris, I think there's another element. I think rubrics is always really cool, and we talked about this briefly in the past. But rubrics is one way, and then but I think I always feel like it's the dirty of assessment, right? Like the idea that Google Classroom has other ways of checking your work, right? And maybe if you wanted to look at it from your point of view, Chris, if you scroll up, I think it's up at the top. You know, we mentioned originality reports the other day, and then, you know, you can add originality reports. So, like, let's say you have a severe problem with students who are copying information from the internet and pasting it in there into their essay. Then you know, originality reports is something you can tick on. But the only real caveat with originality reports is it's hard to use it strategically, because if you don't have G Suite for Education Enterprise, which comes at a cost, you only get 3 originality reports per class for free. So you make a Google Classroom, you can only create 3 originality reports per class. So that's 3 assignments can use originality reports. So if you're only assigning essays to your students 3 times a year, not too bad. But it's just hard to sort of think about, how do I continue to use it? So I just don't want to spend too much time on it, Chris. I just want to share with you that this essay that Alfred Hitchcock wrote on this one time I've used originality reports, it immediately gets flagged up there in the right. So you can see there that it says, hey, one flagged something. What does it say? Flagged
passage. Yeah.
Passage. And if you click on that, it will take you to where it will look at that passage and compare it to what they found on the intranet. And so it can be useful. So, for example, I literally cut and pasted this into Alfred Hitchcock's assignment, because I like him. I'm helping him cheat. And in this situation here, all but like 3 words have been stolen from the internet. And so if that's your thing, if you sort of feel like you want to catch kids out on that, then you can do that. And that's not me judging you. That's just me not being able to connect very closely to this. But it's originality reports can be used for that. So I guess we're calling it one way of assessing. But just be conscious that you can only use it 3 times so 3 assignments can have originality reports per class that you set up. So anyways, just something I thought I'd mention that maybe some of you might find useful. And then, of course, I should also go back to say that G Suite for Education Enterprise comes with unlimited use of originality reports, in addition to a whole wealth of privacy and security features that come along when you pay for that.
So, Jim, are we going to jump onto the Google Sites?
Yeah.
So
do you want me to share? We're going to talk about Google Sites, I think, next, and then we're going to just really talk about it in the context of a portfolio. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So, do you want to share Jim's screen, Georgia? That'd be awesome.
So I just wanted to introduce this concept, using Google Sites in my classroom when I was teaching in California to secondary students. So I had year 9 through 12. And I taught film production. And so portfolios was a big piece of that, because I really wanted my students to be able to see their growth over time. Because, as you know, it's hard to measure when you're so intimately connected to your own creativity. It's hard to remember the days where you didn't know anything versus what you know now. And so I wanted students to be able to measure that, or at least be able to see their own growth. And then, of course, be able to showcase that to the other students in the classroom. And so each of my year 9 students created a Google site. And of course, we're using classic Google Sites because I'm old. And it's the idea that Google Sites, I introduced it to year 9s, and I had, I taught in California, in a part of California that it was, there's a range of ability in my classes because of my subject, of course, but it's also just in where we were teaching, regardless of whatever that means. The idea here is that my year 9s created a Google site. That's all they did, is they created this home page. And then every video project that we worked on, my students created a new page. So I'll just give you a sense. The first one they worked on was this door scene. And so they had to upload their video. So they had to figure out how to get their video online. So they used Google Drive. They shared it with their teammates. They had to each student had to summarize the project in their own words. And then each kid over in this sort of small type had to do a reflection. And it was great to be able to sort of start off with the door scene. That was their very first one. And then finish with like a Shakespeare sonnet or something like that, where they had to watch read a Shakespeare sonnet, interpret it in their own words, and then create a video about it. And you can almost see just by peeking that his reflection was much longer than his first reflection. And we start looking at the details of that project. It was beautiful because at the end of the year, everybody just sat there staring at their own work. And then, of course, we shared it, and we had Google Forms to be able to sort of give feedback and all that. I just wanted to share that at the start, because this was a year-long class that I really felt like was so beneficial to me as an instructor, to be able to see the joy in the kids' understanding of their own growth, and understanding of their own talent after the year. So,
but if you think about that, Jim, I guess we could say that we're using Google Forms to capture a single moment in time. Like, it's just now where you are with your understanding of whatever it might be. You can use something like those Google Slides, Canvases, and project kind of portfolios to capture something over a few weeks, or maybe like a unit or something. So we're capturing evidence of growth, learning growth over time. But what I love about what you did with these classes was actually you're catching that learning growth over like a year, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really powerful. That's so powerful. And I know it's maybe pleasure delay and kind of having to wait and keep adding to that over time. But to be able to go back and say, look what I produced one year ago, and look what I can do now. I think that's such a powerful piece in that, right?
And Chris, in this situation, it wasn't just the talent that they developed for creating video and meaningful story and impactful emotional stories, but also they were able to see their ability to write and their choice of words and incorporating the vocabulary of the classroom into that space that they probably didn't notice until you really almost have to be explicit and point it out to them, just to sort of talk about that. And I think that's really great. And I'll also share, I use Google Sites a lot for project-based learning and really to be able to embed your calendar and scripts in a document as a document. You embed your script as a document into that. It was really great. I saw kids take this from my class and then go into their other classrooms and ask their teacher if they could showcase their learning using a site as opposed to what method that the other teacher had asked for, which of course made me no real hero to other teachers.
Now, and this was back in the 17th century when you were using original Google sites.
That's right. We all had to wear those neck
the ruffs, the neck ruff. Yeah.
Yes.
So for those of you who are newer to G Suite, you probably haven't even seen what is called classic sites. And I love classic sites like Jim. What we now have is what is sites now is to us will always be new sites. So George, if I can just have my demo screen up, please. So when you go to create a new site on new Google sites, it's actually, we shouldn't create the size, but they've taken a little bit out of the joy of creating sites because they've made it a little bit too easy. So in the good old classic sites, you had to really think through things, and there was even sometimes a little bit of coding that needed to be done. New sites is really, really easy for anyone to create. So, and what they've got actually recently just added within the last few weeks is a student portfolio template. So there are a few really nice templates in here, like class templates and student portfolios. But what we want you to think about now is forms is getting a moment in time. Project slides are getting like a unit or something. This portfolio could be something that the kids carry with them, not even just in a year, but in their entire time with you in school. And wouldn't it be interesting if when they left school, it translated into their version of LinkedIn, or, you know, they kind of take stuff out of here and put it into LinkedIn. So what we've done is just really quickly kind of fudge together a little bit of a learning portfolio for students using Google Sites, just to show you what that looks like. So this is my learning journey. I can add photos of myself. This is my wife's favorite photo of me, so I just put that in there. I'm a teacher, and you know, when you classically fill in your CV, so I'm a teacher of French, Spanish, technology, and design thinking. I speak English, French, and Spanish. I am competent at using Microsoft Word and Excel. Like, that was the thing that you used to write on your CV, right? I know how to word process. I've also put in like a document, which is my...
I just have to share, I used to put that I was internet savvy.
Yes. Oh, so we need to create a digital badge, someone. So maybe Heather, you can do me a Bitmoji badge of Jim being internet savvy, and we can award that badge. But I can put anything into this site, so it's so easy to use. It breaks down sections. I can add in docs, and this is the really powerful stuff. I can add in anything from Drive. I can embed. I can add in image carousels, but I can also add in YouTubes, maps, documents, slides, all that kind of stuff. So if I've done my design thinking project, I might actually want to embed the slide out of the slide deck, which I've been using because I'm so proud of it, and just pop that in there. Under my achievements, I've got what are you really proud of? I've got my 25-meter swimming badge. I don't know if that's a thing. Like, definitely in England, you used to get an actual physical badge and have to sew it onto your swimming trunks. In terms of my strengths, it's definitely triceps and feet. They're my kind of really strong areas. And then my goals are improving my empathy and self-awareness. So I might have one page which is kind of about me, and then as I click on my little drop down here, I've got other pages like classes. So for example, this is the school year 2020. I'm in year 10, and you can add all of this information. These are my different classes. These are my highlights. This is the work I'm most proud of. So getting that, collecting that as a portfolio, and then let's, you know, Jim and I, we use this term all the time when we're doing some design thinking work, is how might we reimagine? And one of the things is how might we reimagine parents' evenings, traditional, or, you know, parent-student conferences, or whatever language we use. Well, what a beautiful thing for students to develop their portfolio in sites. Their parents or guardians come in. We can probably do this digitally and socially distantly if we want to. The parents, guardians come in. We pull up the site, and the kid leads through it. The kids are saying, well, this is the work I'm most proud of right now. This is the work which I think has really demonstrated my empathy or my collaboration or whatever it might be. And it is literally as easy. So if I just jump onto you can create new pages under the Pages tab. If I just jump onto the Classes page here, I can create sub-pages. I maybe go to my Maths page. And then if I want to insert a slide or some photos, it's literally just click on them. It opens up a little browser here, and I might stick that design thinking one in actually. So there's my design thinking canvas. Insert that, and it's, you know, you can drag it to make it bigger, And there you go. Straight away, you've got an interactive website. So Google Sites are a fantastic piece around assessment.
Yeah, Sarah points out something. I think it was you, Sarah, that sharing files is a really important piece of this, right? Like making sure that that you share the files correctly, because if I insert a doc, it'll allow you to insert a presentation, for example, into your site, but that presentation might only be available to you, so only you signed into this. Your Google account could see it. So you want to be sure that you make that visible to anyone with a link or something like that, depending on how you're sharing it.
I think you might want to just, sorry, Jim, you might just want to pop this out in a, like if you're in a site, rather than trying to find it in Drive, is you can just, when you hover over it, you get this option up here to pop out. So open it up in a new tab. And it's because it's a slide, is I need to open the editor. Pop it out in a new tab, and then I can do my sharing permissions directly from there. So I know what I'm doing in terms of who I'm sharing with. Actually, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but the new sharing interface is available now. So it looks beautiful. He says as it doesn't load. Oh, here we go. So there's the new sharing interface and the ability to show who you shared these documents with and also get the link. So slightly different sharing options there. Jim.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the time. We're doing it again.
Yeah. We don't believe in time, and so those of you joining us, you're probably prepared to you've blocked off your whole evening, because that's what we're doing. We just keep going. I love it because we just it's fun. It's fun to be able to share what these are, and of course, great to see what everybody else is sharing in their in the chat as well. I think it might be. I don't know. I feel like there's a few things, Chris, if you don't mind, maybe popping, going into full screen there and seeing if it'll work. The idea of just being able to get some feedback from your students is great. It's, if you're using slides like we're using slides today, there's opportunities for us to insert slides from different partners that make your slides even more interactive. And one of them, maybe it should be this, but maybe it won't. There it goes. Forget it. I knew that wasn't going to happen. So we noticed right before the show that one of the things we were going to show is inserting poll everywhere questions. It wasn't working when we started, so I was hoping your time would let us have it. But don't worry. If you wouldn't mind, George, just sharing my screen, I'd love to be able to show you what this looks like in a different way. So poll everywhere is a great way to assess your audience and meet with live assessment, just sort of asking questions live. But in addition to poll everywhere is also Pear Deck. We mentioned Pear Deck last week, and Pear Deck is an add-on. So if you go into Google Slides and you drop down and go into Get Add-ons, you can create an add-on or install the add-on from Pear Deck. And Pear Deck looks like this. So I can actually open up once I've installed it. Open up Pear Deck, and over on the side on the right will appear this Pear Deck box, and I can ask questions in a Google slide that allow my audience to interact with me, and I can insert these types of questions even from their template library. So, for example, when you're done and ready to add questions, you can see over here to the side I've added 2, and if you go up here and you hit Start Lesson. This is what happens. It opens up a new screen and it says, hey, do you want to do this student pace? In other words, kids can access this at any time, or do you want to do it like what you're doing right now, synchronously, and create this questionnaire and live presentation? And so what Pear Deck does, it connects to your Google Drive, and it takes your presentation and uploads it to their servers, and it creates this. And so if you want, we only have a couple minutes to be able to do this, but if you want to do this in a different tab, so open up a new tab on your computer or use your phone and go to joinpd.com and type in those letters when it comes up, joinpd.com, and then type in Green Yards Keep Warm Muffins. So GYKWM as your code. You will it'll register you as a student into this class, and it's a really cool feature. It allows you to ask these to see live demonstrations, right? So Chris, I'm very suspicious that you are the only, oh, here's some people now. There we go. So once that's done, I can go, okay, start the class, right? So I'm going to assume you four are the ones who are going to do it. So here's the presentation that we've been working on. And here's our first question, right? So on your screen now, your presentation is being moved by me. And it's and you should be able to move your dot around to how you're feeling. And I can now choose to show those responses. Okay. So now if you want it, if those of you playing around, you can move that dot. That's you. Oh, look at everybody's feeling like they understand. Keep going. Some people, maybe I'm suspicious that's you, Chris.
It's definitely me.
It's definitely you. But I love it because you can see it's a little bit delayed, but I love it. It can get a quick assessment of how that's going. And then here, I'll just do another one because it's so much fun. I'm going to move to the next question, and it's this one. How many years have you been in education? And you can now click. You should have a place to enter in text. Down on the bottom, I think it says enter or respond to question or something. And then I can show you the responses here in this grid. And yeah, it's such a cool, it's live, it's happening. I can engage my audience in a way that sort of checks for understanding or just, checks for wellness or whatever it might be. There's so many cool features in there.
I just changed it to 50 just to see what would happen. And it's done it. And what I like, Jim, about that is, even though I hate them, which I think I said on this webinar about an hour ago, was it creates a boxing whisker plot so you can see the distribution. So seeing that's highlighting the average one there right in the middle.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very neat.
It's such a cool feature, and it's just a quick way for me to just show you that there are partners out there who also work with Google to help with that. And I think you get like 90 free days. So some of these features are premium, some of them are not. But just so you know that there are. I think it's 90 free days. So during all this drama, hopefully we'll be done in 90 days. I don't know. But anyways, just be thinking about it. You can do it in front of your whole class as well. So you can literally say, hey, kids, don't pull out your phones and then go to this website and don't respond to me with your answers. So anyways, I just wanted to share that one really quickly. And then maybe if I have a second, I just want to share another one that from another partner we've talked about in the past. Really, it's text help, right? You remember text help? We talked about the read and write. And I was watching one of their webinars yesterday, and Greg O'Connor, one of the guys who works there, he really sort of shared this extra step for me that really connected. When kids are writing, before they turn in that essay to you, they can use read and write as an opportunity to have it read that essay back to them or back to you.
Elephants are big, like really big. They are the largest land animals in the world. These dudes are also clever and sensitive.
And so as you're listening to this, when we read back our own writing, we miss a lot of the stuff because we wrote it, right? We add the words in that we missed. Well, this computer will not miss those words. So as you're listening back to somebody reading your writing, you can go, wow, maybe I should change these dudes to something else, or I should, remove my likes or whatever. Anyways, I thought it was just a cool feature that he shared as part of Read and Write, which is free for teachers. And I think they're offering it free for everyone until the end of June. So just be thinking about that. If that's something you're interested in. I hate to really kind of spruik things that cost you money at the end, but I think Read and Write and Pear Deck are some of my favorites. And of course, we don't get paid for that, Chris. I just want to mention that.
I don't think we get paid for anything.
I don't think we do.
Jim, so just George, if you can just jump across to the demo screen. We are already at time, and Georgia did put a note in telling us that there was a few minutes left. Now, what we would love from you, if at all possible, is feedback on these webinars, because we've now done a bunch of them, and we hope they're really useful to you. And we love the fact that we have people who come back to them and join in. We feel like we already know some of you really well, and it's just wonderful for you to share. Please,
it's probably important, Chris, that when they share feedback about how we go over every single time, we're going to probably ignore that. So,
we won't, but I won't. Just hi.
Kimberly.
Remember me? Yeah.
Kimberly, our boss. So yes. Hi, Kimberly.
I will reiterate what Chris said, that I learned a lot this afternoon from you guys, and I always do. And I've had the pleasure of working with the two of you for 7 years. We met each other 7 years ago at the Google Certified Innovator Academy 7 years ago last week, guys. That's how it was our 7-year anniversary.
Yeah, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Happy friend anniversary.
Happy 7-year friendiversary. And I've really enjoyed all of that time together and learning. And I was really impressed by some of the ideas that you guys shared tonight. I think while you guys are filling in the feedback, I love Sarah shared this thought, which I know will resonate with you, Jim and Chris, because we've had conversations about this, about, we started this webinar series very much where it was, okay, we're going to be teaching online. We have our kids at home. What does that really look like? What are we going to do? What's important, etc. And we know that we have had an announcement about the staged return to school. And I do think it's a really important thing for us to think about. Of all of this stuff, what are we going to take back to face-to-face teaching when that does go back to normal? So thank you for that provocation. The link to the feedback is in the chat as well. So bit.ly/VIC DET webinars. Be aware of the capitalization in that. And as Chris said, we do really value your feedback. We have a few webinars to go in this particular series. And I mentioned last week how nimble and flexible Chris were, and I avoided saying that this week because apparently they hurt themselves trying to pretend that they were. So they are very willing to adapt and I was going to say pivot, but I feel like that's a little bit cliched now. So iterate based on your feedback. So please make sure that you do fill in that feedback form. And Chris and Jim also have their contact details on the page right now. So if you do want to get in contact with them, that is the way to do it. And as we mentioned at the start, again, you can also register through the link that Magic George Genie has just put up on the screen. You can register for upcoming webinars as well as those virtual office hours, which we talked about. And we are really lucky to have the likes of Chris and Jim involved in helping people through our virtual office hours. So if you're an education leader or an IT leader, please jump onto the link that is now on the screen, and we'll drop in the chat in a minute, and sign up and grab some time to go through this stuff and talk in detail with fabulous educators that we have as part of our virtual office hours. Chris and Jim came on and just totally took over. Sorry.
Did you notice how used to that we are? We were just like, oh, Kimberly's here. We'll just stop talking. That's it. We're done.
Was there anything that you wanted to say before we finish off? Keeping in mind that we are 2 minutes over.
We're only 2 minutes over. I feel like we have 10 more minutes.
No.
No, we're done. Thank you. Genuine thank you to everyone for joining us and jumping in that chat. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you guys.
Nice to see some new people too. But thanks for joining us and taking the time out of your day.
Yeah, and please register for the series. We will be back next week with another webinar, and we would love to have you join us live. Also, I've said this before, please share this with others. So the links to all of our previous webinars are on the site, and we very much encourage you to, take what is useful to you, pass it on to others, because we are in a time more so than ever before. I think it's really important that we are supporting each other in education. So if you think this will be helpful to someone, flick them the link and encourage them to come along next time. And lots of lovely things coming up in the chat, guys, that I don't know if I want to make you feel that great. Look at this, you guys have all of these nice
Anthony, I'm going to give you front row tickets next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a front row?
Oh, what? How did Jim get that? What?
No. So Chris, now
okay, we're now just chatting.
Now we're just talking.
I just want to finally answer Lisa's question before we finish off. So Lisa, these are all being streamed onto YouTube as you guys are watching them right now, which means that they will be available from the Google for Education YouTube channel for, I'm going to say eternity. I don't know if that's.
I think so.
I don't think my contract says eternity.
No, but it's not about you guys anymore.
Brilliant. Jim, what do you want to wear in your Bitmoji sticker? Heather's going to make it for you.
A black shirt. I always feel like this white T-shirt is not my style. But
it's not flattering. All right, we should probably finish now, right?
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks very
so much. Take care.
Again next week. Stay safe, everyone.
See you next week.
Bye.